All right, friends, thanks for joining us today. We have Ty Walker with Smoke in Chimneys, the trout farmer that has a lot of amazing things going on. We've had it in our food club now, and we just wanted to dive into the world of trout because in homesteading, we don't talk about fish a lot, except for like in the pond in the back.
I mean, I think maybe some tilapia pops up here and there,
Maybe,
but
yeah.
that's about it.
Right. So join us as we get into the world of fishing. All right, Ty.
Yes.
What is the word on homestead fishing like, or homestead fish raising? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it aquaculture or not or whatever. I mean, it's very, very small. Like Lacey mentioned, like there's a couple people that mess around that I know with tilapia, but beyond that, I mean, you've really got to have a water source that is minimum like a couple 100 gallons a minute to be able to do anything, So it's not like pasture or woods or something that's more readily available. I think it's just more of a barriers to entry type issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am thinking a little differently, like about this whole charade. I want to hear, like, where in the world are you from, and how did you end up as a fish farmer?
So
start real far back, like.
All right, so yeah, my name's Ty Walker. I'm married. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I grew up on a farm, but moved away for some years and then kind of wanted to come back and get back into it. Me and my wife farmed in Oregon for a while. And then we came back to get my grandparents' family farm back up and running. It was like mixed pasture woods. We were doing pastured pork, grass-fed beef, some lamb, just doing the grazing thing mainly.
Mm-hmm.
And this opportunity came up at this trout hatchery about 4 years ago. I got a call from a friend that was like, "Hey man, there's this trout hatchery in Newcastle, Virginia." And I'm like, "Where's Newcastle?" and we were living in like a single wide trailer at the time. And on this property, there was like a 3-bedroom house. So my wife was like,
Done.
I don't really care. She was like, she literally was like, "We can't move here because you're just going to be fishing all the time and not getting anything done." So it was kind of like, man, I've been a fly fisherman my whole life, but that really doesn't have anything to do with raising trout per se, but I was interested in it. So we ended up, we just felt God on it, really. I mean, we prayed a lot about it. It was a huge risk, a huge decision, leaving our grandparents' farm. We built, we had like animals and stuff and kind of in essence starting over again, so we just kind of felt like this is the move for us. We made the move, and it's been a labor of love for sure. It took us it took about 2 years just to get the place up and running. It took a whole year just to like clean up the trash. I mean, we couldn't even get the dang water on. We couldn't even figure out how to turn the water on. We first got up there.
The history of the property.
Okay, so it was built in the 1930s by the Department of the Interior. They operated it until the 1980s, where it was sold onto the private market. It changed hands. Excuse me?
As a hatchery.
Yes. As a just trout. I mean, the water's 55 degrees year round, so it's too cold for like catfish or tilapia or something, but perfect for trout. So it had been vacant for a while, like, I don't know, a year or two before we got there, and knew nothing. I mean, couldn't even hardly spell trout, So,
but you were a fly fisherman, so you knew what a fish looked like.
You knew how to,
for sure. And I knew, but that was what was tough, was like the barriers to entry. Like, for example, to buy eggs from a hatchery, minimum orders 25,000 eggs. I was like, dude, I need like 50 egg. Like, you know, and they're
how
like,
much does that cost? Like, how much does 25,000 eggs cost?
About eight or 900.
Okay. So it's not it's
no,
like
not horrible.
Yeah.
It's not like buying hatched turkeys. My God, $9 a piece or something.
You're bringing up this whole new, like, okay, how does fish farming work? So you are buying eggs, growing them, and then selling the fish, and then doing that on repeat. Like you don't, like they don't procreate in your.
Well, we have a small breeding program here, but that's like a whole nother. It's like the difference of like when you first get into like pigs, like just do some like finishers every year to get a handle of it instead of like, now you got a board, now you got sows, now you got breeding. So, it's just a whole nother. We're like
yeah.
Go ahead.
It's got me thinking of like broilers. Like, is that kind of the same system? Like you're buying in, day old chicks, but in this case, eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like a broiler program where you have to have fresh chicken every week.
Right.
And you like, which is like, we all laugh because that would be extremely difficult, and we're just now kind of, because, we have mainly 3 different sizes of trout that we kind of market. You have a 12-ounce fish. I'm not trying to get too in the weeds here. If I am, we can.
I'm interested. Yeah.
So you have like a 12-ounce fish, which is for a restaurant that's going to be serving whole trout, like how we're all selling it to people with the frozen, they cook it, they eat it, right? Then you have that's for restaurants doing whole fish. Then you have a 1-pound fish, which no restaurant wants a 1-pound fish because it's too big to fit on a plate. It's a little, then you kind of get into the price point issue, but it's perfect for a retail setting, like farmers markets, meat boxes, that kind of thing. And then we have a trout that's like 3 or 4 pounds, which is for restaurants that do mainly like prefix menus or tasting menus where each person's getting like a 1 ounce or 2 ounce portion. So
that's a big trout. Like,
yeah, it is big.
I'm thinking the ones we got were like,
they were 12, weren't they?
They're
to 1.
Yeah, pushing 1 pound maybe, right?
Yeah, and that's that way. It's especially for somebody that's not super experienced with whole fish. It fits in a pan or on a baking sheet. It's not like this big crazy like something you see at the zoo or something.
So okay, with the sizes, are we talking about you talk about pork and we talk about chickens? Like if you want a bigger size, you get a different breed. Is that the same, or are you just going longer with the trout?
No, you go longer. You may go 2 years. I mean, you may go 3 years.
Oh, wow.
But that's, so it takes a year to get to a pound, right?
Oh, okay.
And then takes another, once they hit a pound, they'll put on weight quicker. It takes them probably, to get a 2-pound fish, you're at like a year and a half.
Interesting. Okay.
But then too, imagine this. So I have we're dealing with this right now. So I have part of a pond is 12-ounce fish, right? They're 0.75. Well, I've got to keep, if I feed them a maintenance ration, it would be like having a broiler that's at 4 pounds. And you're like, I got to keep the broiler at 4 pounds. So I need to feed it and hold it for 3 months, but it can't gain any weight. Like, are you going to make any money? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you can't feed just to maintain, because the fish food I buy comes from Canada. It's the most expensive fish food on the market. It doesn't have all this trash in it and just bad stuff. Anyway, I pay $1.06 a pound. So you can compare that to pig feed or something. I mean, this is 45% protein, but pig feed's what? 20 non-GMO is what? 28 cents a pound, something like that. So you can't feed something and it's not gaining. Does that make sense? So, and again, we're trying to balance all these different factors of what people want, but then the money's got to work out, or nobody's getting trout,
Right.
Do
so
you have a mentor? Like, who do you learn this from?
no. Dude, I do a lot of what do they say? Either pray or either worry or pray, but don't do both. So but some days I worry and then some days I pray. Depends on if I've
Yeah.
done my quiet time that morning. But yeah, this is our second actual year so our first year was cleaning the property up. The second year was working with the state to be able to process the trout. That was a whole nother
And that's
deal.
a USDA thing. Like
No, it's a VDAX thing. So it's a state level thing. So the whole thing initially they were like, hey, you should take the trout to a fish processor at the ocean, and I was like, well, dude, that's like 5 hours away, and then they're like, well, you should take it to a facility near you, like a state facility, and I'm like, dude, they don't do trout. They don't do fish. Like they do red meat and chicken, So we kind of had to start from zero to come up with like a whole HACCP plan and all that stuff to be able to process the fish. It's so ironic though that you have all that. There's no real basis for processing trout in the state, yet trout is the state fish.
That's ridiculous.
and dude, there's over 2,900 miles, 2,900 miles of wild trout stream habitat in the state.
Wow.
So like for me, it's like for us, like inland rural Virginia, like we should be eating trout. Like that's what our great grandparents would have eaten. That's that's our fish. So that's kind of part of our whole.
It's just like coming at it, the fish side of things. Like fish is a little bit intimidating as a cook. It's also intimidating because there's so many mixed messages out there about if it's like super high in like mercury and all of the toxins and everything. And I mean, there's just, I think people that eat fish, it's just gone down across the board. People are not comfortable with it, familiar with it. They don't know how to cook it. I mean, there's just so many things. And honestly, I feel like you're addressing them all right on the head. I mean, your fish came with this beautiful like literature and you have all these ways to cook it just perfectly. I mean, that you're doing all the right things and hopefully it'll catch and people will like, not no pun intended, I guess. But yeah, like fish is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Maybe you can speak to the like what makes your fish different than all the other.
Well, even like so we're closer to the coast. Like we can have a fish be caught. My understanding
Today.
Let me back up. My understanding is that we could get a fish from like the docks in Wilmington and have it delivered today, and it's like fresh fish.
Mm-hmm.
But
the cost is.
The cost is high, and I still am kind of like, but it's coming out of the ocean, and there's so much junk in the ocean now that like I don't even if it's like wild caught fish, is it really even healthy? Like by the time you eat all that nasty stuff that the fish ate.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, it's hard too. It's so hard too because, especially in like regenerative agriculture, it's so easy to see like the differences, like like a commodity hog operation versus pigs like in the woods. Like you can see it. It's clear. With fish, and they're coming out with new names of fish every day. A barramundi. What the heck is that? I mean, but I'm saying there's so much like branding and so much kind of smoke and mirrors, so to speak.
Yeah.
But and then part of the issue is like, dude, when you say like farm raised trout, like that does not sound nice. That sounds like that's disgusting, and that's exactly what I'm not going to eat.
It's kind that's like if someone came to you and was like, "Yeah, I raised these cows in a feedlot," like, and you're supposed to be like, "Oh, that sounds amazing." Like, is that like what you're saying? Like, kind of the
well, it's like, but it's like, but a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't." So they're like, "Oh yeah," I mean, "Oh, I don't eat farm fish." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So
right? Well,
If
that's
you
the thing about
said
commodity.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't eat like commodity pork is bad, so you know what? I don't eat pork at all. It's like that's such a terrible excuse. Like just because there's someone out there doing it wrong doesn't mean that why don't you just get pork that's raised correctly? You know? So there's this, but there's been so much time and energy spent in the market on pork, on beef, on broilers, on layers. You know, there's a lot there where
Well, I
you
think in
start
the
talking.
other direction on fish, the farmers of fish are saying, you know, like this is better. And then there's all this, for some reason, I think like a battle between the wild caught fisheries and the farm fisheries. And so like there's an equal balance. Whereas I don't know that that's as true in the other industries. Like, I mean, if you talk to a wild caught, that's what I hear is better. But then I hear, oh no, that's more full of mercury. Like I'm always never sure what to buy.
Right.
So take for example, so we're on this pork track. So you have like commodity pork, right?
Mm.
Then you have a level up from that, which might be, I don't know, they're similar system. They're outside, but they're on a lot. Say that's no tier 2. And then you have tier 3, which is like pigs on pasture, you know, polyface, white oak pastures, like what we're all doing. You know, you have these tiers where the price doubles, triples, quadruples as you go up the ladder. Like, for example, in the state of Virginia, trout, right? There's only a commodity trout product. That's it. Like there's no step up and then even above that, a niche, expensive trout. Does that make sense? So,
Right.
so we're trying to, I guess, take trout, the name, out of this commodity level sort of world.
Yeah.
You know, like commodity trout, it trades for about $3 a pound. Mine wholesale, it's $12 a pound. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
But then, so you're trying to educate people, but then some people already have their mind made up, you know. But then I think it's been our job to communicate about water quality, how the fish are raised. You know, we do tours to really show that farm raised trout can be and is like a very, you know, sustainable option. I mean, man, you talk about ocean fishing. I mean, man, like the overfishing is just, and then, you know, the fish are just eating, you know, McDonald's wrappers and stuff all day. And then you're like, I mean, and then you pay triple and you're like, did I really get triple the value? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So talk to me then. That brings up an interesting point that like the hippie in me is like, how sustainable is your operation? Like, do you have pumps running to like pump the water or like, I don't know. What's your opinions on sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those things like, is any farming really like, you know, you get into that sort of art.
Yeah, no, I don't think any farm is like 100%.
The second you bring in a tractor.
So I guess where our stance is, so we don't use any electricity. No electricity is used in raising the trout from egg to harvest. That's one. So there's no pumps. It's all gravity fed. It's just, I mean, it's amazing, you know, how gravity works and, you know, head pressure and generating.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't use any electricity. So that's not, no, like you get into the feed thing. It's like, you know, we start our, small fish, like on a beef liver mash, which is like from our herd.
That's cool.
You know, in the 30, well, and that's what the old timers used to do. In the 1930s, this hatchery here where I'm at, they only fed and ground up roadkill, which arguably would be a pretty clean feed, you know.
Yeah, it's like
what? What?
That's it feels brilliant. It feels like it solves two problems. Like I don't know what they do with roadkill now, but you know.
Well, and then too, I mean, then we've done a little bit of that, you know, with like some organ meats we have left in the freezer and this and that. But then if you factor in like your water weight, it's a gnarly, then you're throwing, like a pond full of like blood and guts. And then it's like, hey, let's take a picture. Then it's just like, oh God, I think so like the feed, like, do I wish we got feed from Canada? Like, absolutely not. It's like there's some feed mills around us, but they're like grinding up fish from the Great Lakes and all this, like, it's just like, then it's like, what's in that, So
what does the trout eat in the wild?
So they're going to eat primarily, they're going to eat bugs.
Yeah.
And it's cool that there's a bunch of like hatches and stuff that come off in the ponds, and they are outside. They're eating bugs and grasshoppers and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, like, I could raise a couple hundred fish on just bugs and, leftover grilled cheeses and whatever, but it's like, I couldn't do it to the scale without like a commercial feed. So, and then it's like one of those things we could switch, but I would need to like start like, I would need to have like a cricket farm or a mealworm. You would have to have a whole nother farm essentially.
Yeah.
So I think as far as like the energy usage and like footprint, we've done a really good job. The feed thing is one of those things, like, we got to have feed. We're doing the best we can. And like, this is one of those things, like, if we don't treat our ponds with care, like, there's no just like, let's go, I screwed up this 5 acres and we overgrazed it for 5 years. Let's just move on to the next field. Well, there's no other field to move on to. Like, if we don't take care of what we have, we're done. So.
How big is your pond?
It's 4 acres.
Okay.
It's just one pond?
No. Wow. That would be insane. No. That's a good, no. So I got 5 concrete raceways that are probably, and if you go, on our website, smokingchimneys.com, or Instagram at smokingchimneys, we got pictures and all that stuff. But yeah, it's like 5 concrete raceways, which is about 70 gallons a minute per raceway. And then we have 5 ponds, and there's 2 other ponds we're going to get cleaned out at the beginning of June that have like trees growing in them. But we're going to, get the whole property kind of back up and running. We've kind of done it a bite at a time, but.
Love it. I honestly think what you've done in 2 years is pretty amazing. You're already, you've already got your trout with 2 of the biggest suppliers of meat, good meat on the East Coast. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good start. I think you're in the.
Yeah. It was so funny, the White Oak Pastures thing. I'd kind of emailed them a little bit, and like, maybe interested, let us know when you're in the area. And I had messaged back, and I was like, I'm going to be in the area like this date. Like, I think it's like the only time I've ever lied to them. I'm like, not going to be in the area. It's like 10 hours away. But I was like, man, if I can, because dude, initially, the farmers markets, and dude, like, even today, as much as all the accounts and all the whatever we've been through, they're like, oh, it's farm raised, like, see you later, So I just knew if we could sort of make our case, in a sense, to like some of these people that are outfits that are recognized and have like respect in the community, like, it would really help. It would help us sort of recreate like what a farm fish like can be.
Yeah.
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 But anyway, I drove down there. 10 hours with a cooler of fish. And I get down there and I'm like, man, I wonder how this is going to go, And I meet with Jenny Harris. She's like, okay. I kind of pull the fish out, giving her my whole spiel, and he was kind of into it. And then Will Harris was there, and he was, I don't know, doing something. He came up, and I was kind of talking to him a minute, and he goes, the first thing he says is, well, thank God I'm a fish eating son of a bitch. I was like, this is hilarious. Anyway, they were so into it, and yeah, it was just cool. That was like kind of one of our first like big accounts that kind of took us on, and
I think when you're in the food world, like we are, you recognize people and their passion and their connection, and in a way like that. I talk to people who make and raise food all the time, and they're like, "Well, we don't do that because people wouldn't pay for it, or we don't do that because, And obviously, you're driven by what's the right thing to do, not necessarily what you're willing to create your own niche for this product that you believe in, and that is something that if you can feel that from somebody. I mean, we've like just in the small food club that we've run, we've talked to so many people about what they make and what they do. And a lot of times they're just doing it because it's trendy, like, oh, hey, let's, I throw microgreens under the bus a lot. Microgreens, like what's the thing? What's guinea or not guinea? What's the bird? Quail. Let's do quail. Like, it's totally cool to try these things. But I think people get sucked into like those keywords that they, Google, and like there's a top 10 list of what you should do on your homestead. And
trout never comes.
Trout is never on that list.
I'm telling you, I promise you, it would be way easier for me to just go get a job somewhere.
Right?
Like way easier. Yeah. So I'm doing it.
You're nourishing people with that food. I mean, like, it's funny. Like, I didn't get to tell you this story, but so I grilled up the trout that we got from you, right?
Mm-hmm.
We did 5, and we had 7 people eating that night. So when our family eats, I mean, we eat. It's a lot of food. So we split up the trout. Everybody got like half a trout, but we had like a smaller one. I want to say it was under a pound.
Okay.
Like one of those 10 to 12 ounces.
Yeah, but my son, he's 7, came up and he's like, all right. And I'm like, okay, this last one's yours. So I put it on his plate and it's like hanging over both sides. So I'm like, I had to like curl it around his dinner plate, right? And we all sit down and everybody's like kind of starts eating.
There's bones. How do we eat around
the bones?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we're talking about all that. And then he's like, my stomach hurts. I mean, we were like, what, maybe 4 minutes into the meal.
It was really.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm like, oh, man, what's wrong? And we look and his plate is empty. The trout is gone.
There's
like
no trout.
He ate the whole thing.
He just crushed it.
Oh, just like one of our friends was like, it was probably like his body just had like a little like, oh, here's the omegas. I need these. And he just like ate the thing. I mean, it was like there were like 2
like an animal. I don't know if he swallowed all.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
But like to me, like it's just been this like thing in my mind of like the nourishment potential there of like, yeah, we eat grass-fed beef and we eat like, pasture-raised chicken, and all of our food is like the highest quality that we can find. But like fish has been kind of one of those things where it's like, well, maybe I'll get it
here and there
from Whole Foods.
Well, it's like dude, like how, like, it's like hot dogs. It's like, man, we love hot dogs. Like, how hard is it to find a guilt-free hot dog?
Right.
Like, it's pretty difficult, So I feel like this is like
we talk about carbon neutral versus like carbon negative or whatever, It's like, I don't want to eat food that's just neutral, I want to eat something that is actually like medicine, right? Like something that is doing the thing it's supposed to do when you eat food, which is hard to come by these days. So I think that when we ate the trout, there was the process of doing it and getting it from you, who's, like this direct connection. And also then having that like whole animal on your plate. Like, we eat a lot of chicken, we eat a lot of meat, and there might be bones in it, but the eyes were looking at you, and you didn't have that because you're like, this animal was not tortured to death, or, like, anyway, it was a really neat and wholesome experience on a lot of levels.
I was also interested because every recipe that I like Googled was like, cook the fish until the flesh is white, but it never, with your trout, it never turned white. It was always like a pink color.
It was pink.
I knew it was done. I have a lot of experience cooking fish, but I don't know. Is that
and just to be clear, because I don't think we've said it, it was amazing. It tasted incredible. It was so good.
A lot of the coloring is in. So like most farm fish is inside, right? So if you're inside, like you get nothing from the sun, no vitamin D, you get no sunlight, so that's part of the issue with the flesh coloring. And then B, like all the bugs and the crustaceans, and then like the organ meats we're supplementing with, like all that is adding to the, what is it, like the keratin levels, like in the flesh, So, I mean, I have a friend, and it's one of those things like, and that's why like in most hatcheries, it's like a recycled water system. So they're using the same water over and over and over. And that's what gives fish or farm fish this like fish tank, fishy type
There's
taste.
none of that. Not even.
Or it's like really like oily, or it's just got a weird mealy or whatever. So this is, yeah, but like yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that's kind of a little bit on, and too, like commodity trout is head off, butterflied, no fins. So I mean, you can hide all the sin. You just cut it off. You create a market where you just cut all the bad stuff off. It's like, it's like the exact same thing with like, raw milk. It's like, let's not change, with the pasteurization, why change our practices so we could just cook the milk and not have to do anything? So where we're doing a whole fish, we don't have anything to hide behind. If it looks like it got off the black pearl and it's got two eye, it's got half a fin, and you're going to be able to tell. But if it looks amazing, then that should be indicative of like where it came from. So
that's so funny. My mind went to it when you were talking about cutting off the sin. I loved it, but it wasn't what I was thinking you mean now, which I love. Like anything that went wrong in the process of raising it that you could just hide behind, like by cutting it off. But what I was thinking is, we meet people all the time who are like, I could never kill a chicken, right? Because they just can't handle the weight of killing a chicken, but they eat chicken. Or even worse, they can only eat like boneless, skinless chicken breast. That's all, because they don't want the trace of life to be there. It's like all the life and the that comes with that is stripped away from the product that people are comfortable eating. And I think that's very true with fish. Like normally, you go into the store and what fish do people buy most? I think at Costco, there's fillets of salmon that have the butter on them, and all you do is stick them in the oven, and in an hour you have a delicious dinner. But what is that really? Like, who knows what they're pulling over your eyes? Like, yeah.
Well, and plus salmon is like that's like a whole nother, conversation. But yeah, I mean, it's coming from Norway, or it's, but that's what's been made like desirable, from like a positioning, a branding perspective, and that's why we're like, dude, like we're here in Virginia, like let's eat trout, and that's what's been tough though. It's like, dude, you can't go anywhere and get it, even though it should be everywhere.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
So
that's fascinating.
It really is. Yeah. I think what you're doing is so cool. Very, very cool.
Thank you. Well, yeah, no, I appreciate you guys' support, and no, I'm looking forward to getting down there and doing some smoked trout pizzas or something.
Oh man, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's what's tough. Yeah, with the anyway, yeah. It's like, it's got a head. It's like, dude, food has a face, dude. It's like, I don't know. Yeah,
it makes me think too. Like, I mean, if every farmer had to come to us and present the food to us in that same way, like bring the cow and like in your hands, like here is the cow, like look and see, I did a good job raising this cow, or like the same way that essentially you do that with the fish. Like if everybody saw the face of the food they were eating, they would most people would be appalled at the majority of the food they're eating.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept that fortunately fish, fits that. It would be.
Well, and I think too, we live in like a world where you try to label something like that so that people know, okay, well, I just look for that label and then I know I'm getting So instead of looking at the face, you look at the label, and the label says it's organic or it's grass fed or it's, even now we're starting to get like regenerative labels. And it's like, okay, all right. Like, I don't really believe in the regulation that brings those things to pass because it's really just a marketing scheme. But B, like we've given up the power that exists between knowing the person who raised the trout and seeing the face of that trout to like some third party that's, just marketing it. Like it's releasing the power of that connection. And I think that's the beauty of what you're doing is that you're clearly very connected to what you're doing and also easy to connect with the people, consumers who want that product.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Ty. So how can people, you've mentioned it a little bit, but how can people
get their hands on your fish faces?
Yeah. Connect with your fish and you.
So yes. So on our website is a pretty extensive list of where you can buy our trout, either retail or at a restaurant. I mean, right now we're in like Roanoke, Charlottesville, Richmond, and just now getting into DC. If you come by you can order and pick up here at the farm. We process every Monday. So, if you pick up on like, Tuesday, you can get fresh trout. Yeah, that would be the best. On our website we're working on like shipping the trout like frozen. That's just a whole nother project we haven't really tackled yet. But well,
I will say I was apprehensive about the frozen fish because generally fresh fish is better. But it was not like frozen fishy tasting at all in any way. So I love.
No, I mean, you even hear frozen fish, and you're not like, man, I'm into that. It just that's part of like we're trying to always like what are the barriers to entry for people like buying the trout, and it's like, oh, it's frozen or it's this or it's that. So you're trying to. I mean, and you hate to be like spend all this time marketing, but it's like, dude, it's 2023, man. Like, if you go into Earth Fair, you're like, dude, my product, if mine is better than all this stuff I'm looking at, my product needs to look as good or better. And that's a high bar. But I mean, it's like, that's just the nature of the beast now, So, and Drew, we talked a little bit about that, how, you could have the best carrot in the world, but unless it's framed in a context where people are going to appreciate it as such, you're probably just going to end up eating it or give it to Bugs Bunny or something,
Well, that is an addition. Like you have wrapped it in paper, so it's not like plastic. And there's something that just elevates it because I don't have to throw away plastic as a part of,
there's a little plastic.
Well, a little one, but it's like wrapped.
Not a lot.
It looks like fresh fish from a butcher, or like old fashioned.
Well, and that's like, we thought about vacuum sealing, but then it's like, dude, then how many of those those 4 or 5 mil vac seal bags? And I mean, dude, honestly, I think vacuum sealing is a little bit overrated. I mean, no one's vacuum sealed anything until the past.
Right.
I mean, which is fine. It's just like, that's not another thing I think we need to we're like dying to add,
Right.
So. Yeah. We've tried it without the plastic bag, and then you got like trout juice running out of it. I don't know. People aren't too thrilled with that, but yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, that is a bonus. I mean, I was excited. Like, I just took the paper package and put it in the sink with a little hot water to, deep thaw it, and that works great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Those are actually, our labels are beer labels, because like a regular label, it's like the condensation really messes with the paper and the label. So that way, at least if you freeze it or thaw it, the condensation isn't, messing that up. But anyway.
Well,
cool.
Good work. I know all of that is a ton of work to make.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Everybody go check out Ty, find his fish, buy his fish. We have it here at the food club at the schoolhouse if you're interested in that. And yeah, thank you so much for being on, Ty.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys.